Africa CEO Forum in Kigali with a panel discussion on the maritime industry, which emits enough CO2 into the atmosphere to rank 6th globally if it were its own country. Now, decarbonization of the maritime industry was the subject of a panel discussion that we moderated. Here are opening remarks from Mathieu Lebour, who is a partner at TNP Logistics.
So the ambition, everybody has heard about the net zero emission for 2050, and the problem is that a lot of infrastructure is needed to achieve that, more than 170 billion US dollars. There's some delay about implementing single windows. We've heard that more than 30% of ports are not yet equipped, despite the fact that this is mandatory now. Of course, there are a lot of projects supported by bodies like the World Bank to digitize operation, to promote the PPP projects all across Africa. But at the end of the day, we don't do much. There's plenty to do to reduce this footprint. And as a summary, what we could do, there are two types of actions. One is related to technology, and another one is related to government and promotion of innovation. Technology, digitization. Yesterday we had, with some of the members present here, another workshop about the necessity to digitalize and implementing single windows in ports. Why? Because it helps to accelerate the rotation and the vessel time in port. And when you save time, you save money, not only money, but also CO2. Second point is data and AI. There are a lot of innovations in not only in Africa, countries like Nigeria is very dynamic at that, about artificial intelligence to optimize routing, to optimize cargo loading, unloading, and so on. So it's only starting now, but it will generate a lot of improvements regarding CO2 emissions. Innovation, we'll see that there are startups everywhere in Africa, not yet fully implemented, but we have till 2050. It will be there. Government, what can they do? Today, to be honest, there are a lot of regulations, and even experts are a little bit lost about that. Maybe standardization, harmonization will be needed to simplify this and make it more efficient and regarding CO2 emissions. Infrastructure, of course, it's a major enabler to have more modern ports, and but the problem is financing, and financing. Its PPP and the private sector involvement would be very important. And there are also in Africa some leaders, for instance in ports, one of the port or operations, they are here and they will present what they do today regarding CO2 reduction. And last, it's also a fleet modernization. There are a lot of projects I can say, for instance, Michelin is developing sails on top of boats. You can also use more green fuels. So this fleet modernization will be will help vastly the CO2 reduction.
All right, then the conversation on decarbonization of the maritime industry then continued with thoughts from our panel.
Maritime transportation companies are looking at that agenda. Obviously, there are still a lot of unknown. I think we have been pioneering within the CMA CGM group on the basis of how do we modernize our fleet with the best available technology at the time of order, if I had to summarize. So that's how we switched to LNG, which was a first step, but not a sufficient one. We're looking at other options, methanol, ammoniac, hydrogen. I mean, all the options are on the table. What we know for sure is that there will not be one solution. It will be a combo of different energies, different ways of propelling. There's still a lot of unknown on how those technologies will emerge, at what cost. There's also a big unknown on how are we going to procure the relevant amount of fuel. Because we can have all the engines we want, if we don't have anything to put in there, it will not work. So there's a lot of unknown, but I do believe that there is momentum. There is an understanding that from all the players, and I think the last pledge at COP28 from the larger maritime players has been very clear. It's a combo of technology, fuel production, and regulation to build a common level playing field, which is key.
We will play our part of the partition. I think the real question is, first, I'll just jump on what the other Matthew started with. He said that today the contribution is 3%. Just to size the problem, if nothing is done, that 3% will become 17% in 2050.
Wow.
And that's the starting point. Now, one might say, okay, what happened since then? Since this was posed as, I think the liners and CMAs playing a leading role in this respect have been instrumental by kind of setting the path and saying, we'll take our part by actually ordering vessels. There's another part which is ongoing, which is the regulatory. There's also the Brest Convention which we signed for, where the main industry players are collectively abiding to the objective, and each one then going back and playing his part. Yeah. So I can tell you what we're doing. We are fully engaged into our very aggressive and a CapEx program. We're investing 200 million euros over the next 3 years to basically turn the port completely green. We are actually the first non-European port that is ranked as an eco-port by PERS, which is obviously we take a lot of pride in that, but we're taking our part. That includes, for example, typically a program that is ongoing with shore power. Shore power is basically to connect vessels when they're docking at the port to electricity so that they don't have to basically burn fuel. That's more or less. So that is something that is underway. We're working obviously on decarbonizing completely our footprint. And coming back on a point, I just want to give you an example on solutions that do impact. The question was asked a bit earlier, how can a single window actually help decarbonization? I'm saying this because yesterday we had a session specifically about the need for what we call PCSs, or port community systems. In fact, in Tangemed, within our PCS, we have implemented a system which is time slot allocation, which we basically implemented what's being done in the airline industry. In the airline industry, when a plane arrives in an airport, you usually know. In a port, you used to know, but you were not exploring that information. We've put in place a system whereby we know exactly when a vessel is coming and subsequently reducing the waiting time. I'll give you a figure that speaks for itself. 25 minutes in a vessel turnaround, just the time for the vessel to come in and out. 25 minutes gained is equivalent to 6 tons of CO2 that is saved. Yep. This is a typical system that we have implemented, and I just wanted to pick this as an example.
Thanks for that, and thank you for pointing out that I'm the only road freight person in a maritime panel.
Diversity, what is,
Yeah. The issue of infrastructure is actually it's actually a really real problem that we are seeing in the markets where we operate today, predominantly in Nigeria, as you mentioned, where the macro. Everybody is suffering from the macro in different ways, but what we're seeing in Nigeria is it's having a direct impact on truck supply. On average, a truck coming into Nigeria is imported secondhand from Europe, the Middle East. It comes in at 20 years old, has about 500,000 kilometers on it. And so the useful life of that truck, once it's on Nigerian roads, is probably about 2 years. And so frequent replacement of those assets is very critical to maintain truck operations and the movement of goods. Now, when you think about how the impact of currency devaluation has affected the cost of those assets, which have actually doubled in the last 12 months, it just shows you how challenging it is to maintain that momentum of replacement of trucks. And so that's posing a major challenge when it comes to the supply and availability of trucks on the road today. And so we're actually seeing it in terms of being able to make these assets readily available and guaranteeing a certain level of reliability in truck supply for the enterprises that we work with, because we are predominantly asset light. To tackle this and also to bring in the aspect of decarbonization, we're now exploring creative and innovative truck supply, what we're calling customized transportation solutions, particularly in favor of gas-powered trucks, which are a lot cleaner and a lot quieter in terms of burning of those fuels. So this requires both, there's a financing component to it, which is actually a major sort of key lever to decarbonization as well. So it doesn't just affect, for example, port operators, it also affects transporters. But gas-powered trucks are a very sort of low-hanging fruit and no-brainer when we think about how to address this truck supply issue and the decarbonization issue. So Nigeria has actually the 9th largest reserves of CNG in the world. So there's a major reservoir of the CNG availability in the country. And whilst there's a need to invest in the extraction and distribution of that of CNG, there's sort of solutions that are coming up to sort of address the challenge of distribution. So you can now put CNG on a truck and position that truck strategically along a transport lane so that trucks can refuel along the way. These gas-powered trucks that are coming into the country are newer. Most of them are actually brand new, so they're also a lot more efficient in their operations and emit less fuel. So that also tackles the decarbonization issue. And the cost, which is a very important factor. The cost of CNG per kilo in Nigeria is almost 4 times less than the cost of diesel today. So it's a lot more efficient and price-friendly for the transporters to operate those trucks. And obviously that translates to lower logistics cost overall, and hence, lower cost of commodities overall. So that's one of the main initiatives that we're piloting along this to sort of get closer towards the decarbonization issue. Matthew also mentioned data and the importance of data in addressing decarbonization. So we are a tech platform. We've operated for the last 7 years in 6 countries across Africa, and through that process, we have gathered quite a bit of significant data on our platform. And we're now sort of leveraging this data and overlaying more sophisticated and advanced technologies, particularly in the AI space, to help enterprises that are using our platform to not only measure the amount of emissions on every trip that they fulfill on our platform, but also to potentially even get to a point where we can sort of create a marketplace where they can trade carbon credits from the trips that they're running on our platform. So these are sort of different ways that I think are low-hanging fruit and opportunities that are available to us today to tackle this issue of decarbonization.
Djibouti Ports and Free Zone Authority has invested $1.7 billion in building new infrastructures, where the ports, free zones, enhancing the existing ports in terms of buying new, I would say, cranes and everything. And we realized very quickly that in terms of efficiency of operations, we're kind of good. Basically, the gate out of the trucks were around 56, 57 minutes. So basically, by the time your trucks is ready to bring out the containers, discharging 2 containers and unloading 2 full containers would take around 56 minutes. But when it comes to documentations, used to take around 72 to 48 hours to 72 hours. So there's a lot of wasted time in terms of waiting due to the documentation. So our focus was first on bringing down the documentation time through the implementation of a maritime single window and port community systems.